Hello dear friends, welcome back to Spiritism and the Media. Today I'd like to bring a story showing what happens in the backstage of a newspaper, actually in the backstage of a news story, of a coverage. And I brought the book In the Domain of Mediumship by André Luiz, channeled by the medium Francisco Cândido Xavier. And we can find the story on chapter 15, Vicious Forces. So what happens in this chapter? In this chapter, André Luiz is talking with Assistant Aulus, and they are going to a restaurant. So they go to this restaurant and they find a room in this place where they see a man that Assistant Aulus and André Luiz, they explain that the man, he wrote continuously under the control of an entity whose repellent aspect called for compassion. So we can see we have a man, this man is writing, but he's writing under the influence of another spirit. And we are not saying that he was an ostensive medium that knew that was in a trance receiving a letter, receiving a book, or channeling something. No, he wasn't aware of that. And let's just read a little bit about what he's saying about this man. At this very moment, Aulus announced attentively, our unknown brother is an able psychograph medium. The entity completely controls his expressive thought cells. He's attached to his imagination and ideas, ascending to his occult will through magnetic induction. The young man wants to produce risky pages and has found one that could help him by feeding his mind. So what is happening here? What's happening here that this man that is under control of this obsessor, of this spirit, he's a friend of a journalist. And this journalist, he's covering a story of murder that happened. And so he's doing this coverage, and he asked his friend to help him to get some information and to check some facts about what was happening. And this spirit, this obsessor spirit who is connected to this man, he's actually someone who is persecuting a young lady who is connected to this crime. So let's try to understand what happened. There was a crime. There was a young lady, a woman who was connected to this crime, but she didn't commit the crime, so she's not guilty, she's innocent. But that spirit that is seeking revenge of that woman because of something that happened in the past, this spirit is trying to make this woman be considered guilty. And how does he do that? How does he do that? He goes to this medium, to this man that doesn't know he is a medium, so he's telling some ideas to this man while he is writing this story to the journalist. So what happens? They say that this man wants to create a scandal that is going to cause a sad family affliction. So many times when we see, especially when we see those sensationalism news, we cannot imagine what is happening in this backstage, behind the cameras or behind the pen or the pencil. We don't know how things are happening in the spirit world, and many times we don't stop to think about that, how much influence the journalists can be receiving in a situation like that. And they say here that the man is not a morally elevated man, this man who is writing this story. That's why he's open to receive those connections, because he is in a restaurant, in a room, drinking a lot, smoking, and he has some vices, some moral vices. So that spirit found an easy way to connect to someone, to send a message that he wants in order to hurt that woman. And how can we see if that's happening in the news or not? Many times we cannot, but the best way that we need to, what we can do in order not to allow that to happen, is to avoid having some conclusions just based in what we see. Because as a journalist myself, I can tell you that when we are having those breaking news, when we are having this coverage, it's very easy for a journalist to fall to the first information that he or she receives and try to publish that in order to get attention, in order to say, I was the first one to bring that information. And many times that information may be the truth, but many times it is not. And who knows if we journalists, we are working under the influence of an evil spirit, a spirit that wants to hurt not us, maybe us, but many times the ones we are talking about. And just to give an example about what happens and how it can happen, I remember one day I was, many years ago, I was in Brazil, working in Brazil. I was covering the murderer of a person in São Paulo, and we were going to the court room because the Attorney General was going to give some information. So every other day we used to go there to receive those informations and to do the news. And one day I was there, and one woman who worked there in the court, she called me and she gave me information that nobody had at the time. It was information about the father of the suspect of the murderer. So there was a man who was the suspect of that murder, and she gave me some information. It was a murder that happened in the family. So she gave some information about his father, and that information was that there was having some legal fight involving him and one daughter that he had in a relationship with another woman. And so nobody had this information at the time, and she gave me that information. I went to the news director and I gave the information to the news director, and she thought a little bit, we thought a little bit together, and she decided not to publish that because it was not going to add anything to the story. It was only going to hurt that family even more, and it was not going to be useful to nobody. So it was more gossiping instead of giving the news. But can we imagine what was happening in the backstage for that news to come to me? After reading this book, I may imagine, okay, maybe it was some kind of spirit that was trying to give that information just to hurt the family, just to make some revenge to the family. And later on, another TV station, they gave that information. But even though that station gave, the other stations, they didn't give. And I'm sharing this story for us to see how important it is for us to be aware about what happens in the spirit world, because oftentimes when we see some news, we can first think, okay, is that true or not? We don't need to accept everything that we receive, especially when it's breaking news, because even today, more than ever, we know that there are many fake news. I've talked about this in a previous show. And not only that, even if it is truth, but many times it's not something that is going to help us or to help the event, to help our understanding. It's just gossip. As I talked also in the previous show about gossiping. Why are we going to gossip? Why are we going to bring some information that is going to hurt others? So it's important for us, I'm telling you as a journalist, for us journalists to be aware about that, and for the ones who are not journalists but who are reading the news, for the viewers, for the readers, to be aware about that as well, because we never know how the spirits are using us to influence us, just to try to get the revenge that they want. So just to close our meeting today, I'm going to read a passage from the book Happy Life by Divaldo Franco, and Joanna de Angelis. So I'm opening randomly the book. And we have here lesson 101. You need serenity every step of the way. Serenity to discern, act, and live. Life gallops ahead and changes scenery every minute, requiring permanent serenity so as not to smash people. The person who gets upset and tries to match the cyclopean speed of these days will snap because he's going from one situation to another very fast, without even time to adapt to previous phase. News comes and events pass, producing immense emotional, mental, and physical wear and tear. Protect yourself in serenity, preserving the equipment of your existence which was designed for use, but not for abuse. That's a beautiful lesson connected to what we read. So serenity is the key here. And as Joanna is saying, we need serenity every step of the way. Thank you so much for your company. See you next week. May God be with all of us.